You know, if I'd have asked myself in 2025 what game I would be sat here right now playing hours upon hours, losing days into nights, just absolutely hooked on, I really would have struggled to come up with Everquest. Everquest in itself is a very strange title for even me to be playing because I have no nostalgic ties to this game at all. I didn't play it upon launch. I wasn't there through the early days. I didn't even have a PC actually when it first came out. I recently picked up Everquest and started playing it, and most recently on the Project Qualm server. And before we do anything, I just want to say a massive thank you to the ladies and gentlemen that keep that server running, for the many passionate players that still dive into that server day in, day out, and have given me one of the best experiences in modern gaming, actually, that I've ever had. But before we get into Project Qualm, I feel like it's just important to paint a bit of a picture as to how I'm even here, why Everquest and why 2025, and if you're watching this in 26 and so on and so forth, why then? Because let's be honest, it's probably unlikely to change. Well, the reality is, nowadays, everything, and I mean everything from everyday life to MMOs, just feels the same. Everyone is chasing the same thing, the same DNA. Unreal Engine 5 used to be a huge staple in something that we would look forward to. It used to be something that would be groundbreaking, something that would be absolutely industry leading, and now, in my opinion, it has become a meme. If I see an Unreal Engine 5 game, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. Every Korean game that comes out now looks the same. Most Western titles are kind of following the same metric, and I'm going to be honest, when you mix in the sheer amount of microtransactions and blood sucking that we have that is fed upon the community, it's quite clear that a lot of these companies are just chasing profit over passion, which is no secret. A lot of games that come out now are lucky if they even make it to 2 years old before they die, or they're put on life support. I basically wanted to find a way to go back to the golden era of not just MMOs, I suppose, but gaming in general. And I did actually try Everquest. I've got a few videos up on the channel. I tried it a few months ago, but on the live servers, and whilst the actual experience of the game was fine once you got around the UI and some of the hurdles there, it became very apparent to me that this was a very solo version of the game, and if I wanted to truly experience what Everquest may have been like back in the day, even just a smidge, I would have to go onto the time-locked progression service, which was paid for in the Daybreak sphere, and I just really wasn't ready to commit to something I just didn't really know that I was going to enjoy. And I had a couple of comments throughout multiple videos on this channel about trying some of the community-based private servers. A lot of people typically came up with a few suggestions for private servers in the comments, most notably Project 1999, Project Guam, and more recently the Hero's Journey. Now, of course, to any of you that are in the private server sphere or the Everquest sphere, there are a lot of reasons, to stay away from the Hero's Journey right now. There's, an ongoing legal battle going on. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know if it's even settled or even close at this point. But, I just didn't want to invest my time in something that ultimately may have the plug pulled or heavily restricted. So I've done a bit of research, and for whatever reason, with Project 1999, I just couldn't get it work. Couldn't get past the account questions for whatever reason. I don't know if it was bugged. I tried multiple times, even got my wife to try. It just wasn't working, and it seemed a bit finicky having to download a certain version of the game. I could just be reading that wrong. I am an outsider to this, so it could just be that I was wrong. However, Project Qualm was a really nice, easy install, and actually looking back on it now, it seemed to be a really nice halfway house between Live and P99. So having done a bit of research as well about Project Qualm, I did notice that they've come to an agreement with Daybreak Games. They've had to sort of limit the server capacity. They'd have to do something with the content, whether they had to release the Lucklin expansion sooner, they had to cap a few things out, take a few custom things out. But it looked like for the most part the lay of the land had kind of been settled. So I decided that this is pretty much where I'm going to call home for the next however long. I just want to say this right now, and this is coming from someone who covers stereotypically a lot of MMOs on this channel. Project Quam has given me a feeling that I haven't felt in a long time, and I'm not sure I've ever felt, just due to the nature of what the game is. Now, there are many fantastic MMOs, many MMOs that I've cast an opinion on in the past that I have said have been my favourite titles, such as Lord of the Rings Online, World of Warcraft Classic, and I still stand by those statements. But having tried a more realistic and grounded version of Everquest now, I definitely have a positive, passionate opinion about this game, because it has kind of shown me a bit of a light where there is only darkness. And that sounds really, really morbid, but you got to stick with me here for a second. When you're so used to seeing the trash that gets put out to us these days, seeing that pretty much every game you've ever played has become more and more solo. You know, you've got people in the Final Fantasy XIV community, for example, that talk about how the game has transferred from an MMO to a solo RPG. And this isn't just Final Fantasy XIV, this is happening in a lot of games. So to be able to find a version of Everquest that still requires you to socialize, not just requires you, but actually encourages you to socialize with people and make that a core aspect of the game, was really, really refreshing. Before I dive too much into my time in Project Quam, I just want to say that the artwork for Everquest was what sold me the game even before I could even play it. Seeing some of the box art, which after a bit of research looks like it was worked on by Keith Parkinson, was incredible, at least the early stuff anyway. Seeing Fiona Vi next to the red dragon on the box art was a real staple for fantasy, at least in the friendship group that, you know, I was in, and, you know, some of my teachers at school would speak about it, because that was the kind of demographic back then. Even though I never really played it, people were definitely talking about it. There is an expansion that I'm yet to do, which I think is called Ruins of Kunark, which has Fiona Vi kind of like chained up on this sort of monument with this lizard. I don't know the actual term for the character. You guys are going to slaughter me for that, but it just reminds me of this real 80s gritty dark fantasy vibe. Even though the game was from the 90s, it just has that kind of shine to it, and it really invokes a sense of mystery and a sense of wonder. It really portrays in your mind what the world could entail without you even playing it, which I think is really, really powerful. I've always also admired the character art, not just in terms of the artwork, but also in the game as well. And of course, you know, a lot of people are going to say the graphics are dead, the graphics are outdated, and I'm not going to sit here and deny that. The game definitely looks old, but it has a real charm to it, a real identity. And after a bit of reading up, and I'm sure there are lots of other people to credit here, but it looks like a chap called Rick Schmitz had done a lot of the character art. And, you know, hats off to you guys and the team and anyone that's worked on this project, really, Everquest as a whole, because what you've made, even outside of gameplay, is groundbreaking in terms of visuals. It really is beautiful to look at. I've actually got many pieces of Everquest art just saved on my computer, just because I really enjoy the look of it, and I kind of want to get away from the digital aspect of Everquest and kind of start to collect some more physical components, because after watching some of the documentaries on the game, seeing the hand brush techniques to some of these pieces of art is incredible. And we live in a day and age now where AI and digital assets are taking over the world, so it's really nice to see that we still have something that rings true to days of old, something that we can touch and something that's tangible. Either way, without going off on a tangent too much, the game had definitely sold itself to me without me even playing it. But hey, this is where we are now. Project Quam is somewhere I've basically called home for the last couple of weeks, and I definitely wanted to put a bit of time into this game before I even made this video, because I just find that with a game as deep as Everquest, especially when you're looking at private servers, you're looking at time lock progression servers, you're looking at different expansion releases, it can be very difficult to get a real solid feel for the game. And I would even argue that, especially now, I still don't have that, really. I don't have a full understanding of the game. I'm still getting used to some of the systems, the community, the game itself, because, I mean, you really need to switch off. Anything you've ever learned about an MMO, you need to turn off and forget about if you're playing Everquest, because it is a totally different experience. I mean, to be honest with you, even just getting the UI to a place where you want it is half the game. I'm not even kidding. Like, getting the UI to a position where I'm happy with it, where I can read things. I've got 3 different chat boxes right now where I've got my guild set up. I've got the combat text. I've got tells. I've got out of character information coming up. It is just wild. But yeah, you do need to absolutely just forget anything you've ever learned or anything you know about more modern MMOs, because EverQuest is definitely more than that. There are basic buttons and key presses missing, you know, that you think would just be a normal thing in most modern games, like a looking for group tool, for example. Everything is fairly manual here. You can still look for group, you can still flag yourself looking for group, but you have to type it in. If you want to know who's in the zone, you have to /who. If you want to know who's in the zone but in your guild, you have to /who guild. You have to / looking for group on. It's very manual, but what it does get you doing is it gets you interacting with the game a lot more, and then thus after that you start to interact with the community a lot more too. Now, the social side of Project Qualm and EverQuest in general is something that I wanted to come a little bit later, because at an absolute fundamental, I wanted to just learn the basics of the game. I'd played the live server for a little bit, but as I mentioned, didn't really get on with that too well because it was just super solo all the time, and I realized that I'm probably not going to see anyone until I'm like level 100, maybe above. But I wanted to get a decent understanding of what early EverQuest is like, and a lot of things are very different here from live. Live has actually dumbed down a lot of the things that were pain points in the previous versions of the game. You know, I remember playing on live thinking, wow, this takes a long time to scribe your skills and learn your spells, and man, I've really got to sit down to learn this stuff all the time, and boy, did I not know what I was getting myself in for. In Project Qualm, I could sit down to learn a spell, make a cup of tea, a sandwich, hoover the house, come back, and I would still be about halfway done. It is unreal, honestly, but what that does make way for is a real social opportunity to just build bridges. I can imagine the perfect opportunity to switch between your spells is in between certain pools, or if you're pulling up to a dungeon with some of your friends, you can just say, hey, this is what we need right now. This is the game plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull these people. You're going to charm. You're going to mez. We're going to heal. I'm going to buff. Can you equip a certain spell? And you would all sit there. You would change your spells over. You'd be typing away, talking about life, talking about your favorite expansion, talking about, you know, what enemies are your favorite, what gear you're looking for. And I feel like that sort of time in most modern games is really missed. And that's one thing that really drew my attention to it, because I started to bump into the same people over and over and over again. Not because the server is dead at all. There's actually a lot of people playing. In fact, the 1200 player cap on Qualm is almost very closely met most days. I would say at least 700 to 800 people on, you know, like softer days, and then weekends it does get higher than that. But you start to bump into these people over and over again because you start to build relationships and you get tells from these people. You pass them on your journeys and you start to build a familiarity with these people, which is just kind of unheard of, because you're spending so much time socializing with them, you're learning bits about them. You just have this sense of community, this sense of family at all times without inserting the Dominic Toretto meme too much. In modern day games, you don't get that. You run from pack to pack, you blitz everything down, that's it. At the end of the dungeon, people claim their loot, they leave. That's it. In EverQuest, especially Project Qualm, and probably the likes of P99, although I haven't played it, it's very different. Very different. In most settings, you're not necessarily, from what I've experienced very early on, as you can see I'm max level 11 in these clips, but throughout the game, or at least in my experience, you are picking a point to go to. Like, for example, here I'm doing the Crushbone Orc camp, which, you know, someone very kindly showed me to, which again, hats off to the community, because you guys have been amazing just showing me from A to B. But I'm doing this camp, and typically you'll post up in 1 or 2 spots. You wait for the enemies to respawn. You've got someone who's a dedicated puller. I believe like a bard, for example, is really good for pulling enemies and mezzing them and being able to slow them down. And that's pretty much what you would do, at least at this early stage. And if there's a named enemy you're chasing, maybe you pull them out from occasion, but you're not just blitzing from one point to another. You almost set up camp you almost set up like a little social hub that you guys just work from. And essentially you'll be there until the party disbands, or, you know, maybe you just get bored, or someone just decides to tag out and they have to log off and you swap in for someone else. But realistically, it's more of a social hub than it is just clearing a dungeon, for example. And it's because of this that you get so much time to spend with people, and it's because of this that you get the ability to build these social relationships that then fleshes out other aspects of Everquest. And I would honestly say, if you're new to this game, if you're new to Everquest in general, you need to speak to people. There are certain things that you'll just outright miss, certain things that you just won't really be able to do, or will really struggle to do if you're not being social, if you're not grouping with people. And more importantly, I find if you don't socialize with people and get yourself into a circle, you know, a bit of a community in Everquest, you'll miss out on being part of a guild, which has been one of my favorite components of this game by far. I was never the guild guy. I was never the sort of person that really wanted to be a part of anything. I wasn't really that bothered. But actually now, a core component of what I enjoy doing when I log into Everquest is just checking on my guild, checking how people are doing, seeing how their day's going, you know, maybe what items they've been farming, what they've been doing IRL. I just find that really cool. It's like a sense of community. It's like this extended family that you've got every time you log into the game, and everyone is always super up for just talking about, you know, you and what's kind of really interested to give you, you know, their time of the day. You know, they're really interested in just giving you their 5 or 10 minutes to check in on you. And like, you know, even if I get to like level 11, they're like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I've just got to level 11. They're like, wow, awesome. Like, that's so good. Do you need anything? Like, do you want a hand with anything? Whereas, you know, I'm in a couple of guilds in other games, but it's very kind of radio silent. People just raid log, and that's pretty much it. And it doesn't seem to be the case in Quam at all. I did want to make a point to myself when I first started off that if I was going to join a guild, that I wouldn't just accept, you know, like a full set of armor, or just like the best weapons or the most money. You know, I'd quite happily take a couple of donations to get myself started. I think I got gifted a couple of pieces of banded armor. So if you guys watch this video, even outside the guild, if anyone has helped or allow me to get a drop, you know, shout out to you. Thank you so much for doing that. But I really just wanted to see the progression of my character happen in front of me. And let me just tell you that that is one of the most compelling things that I have come across actually when playing this game, is seeing my character start off with nothing but a sword, you know, this pesky sword in my rags. You know, as you can see on screen, I'm playing a paladin, which apparently is a tough choice in this version of Everquest, which I didn't really know, but hey ho, we're here. But yeah, essentially you start off with nothing, and seeing that character build up and equip better, more intricate pieces of armor, and all these different pieces of equipment have got different stats on them. Some have got strength buffs, some dexterity, some actually emit light, you know, for darkened areas like my shield. And seeing all that come together, and all of a sudden you've got this fantasy, right? I'm a big fantasy guy. To me, character fantasy is everything. I won't play a class or play a certain character if my mind just doesn't agree with it. And I have always loved the idea of a holy paladin, this kind of like female battle paladin. And I typically play females in a lot of these MMOs. I tend to just like envision that my character is my wife. Even like, I know that sounds weird, but like, I have a wife in real life. I tend to name it after her and sort of style it like around her as a character. You guys are gonna roast me for that, I'm sure. But I've got this kind of like theory that I really enjoy this kind of holy female paladin, and seeing her go from this like basic civilian to this kind of armor clad like holy warrior now that I've got my spells. It's just really, really cool, and you just don't really get that sort of progression, that meaningful progression in many other games. In fact, one of the only other games that I've felt that in is WoW Classic, and it's something that's so important because everything is hard earned in this game, but what it does mean is that when you do earn it, it feels so good. You honestly log off and you feel like you've actually accomplished something, as weird as that sounds. And Everquest is a very visual game. You know, I still don't have the experience to really recognize the cool weapons, the really rare stuff, but people do notice. I didn't really get sucked into the gear progression too much until I first entered into the Bazaar, which I think I've come to understand there are two versions of it, or there was one in the Common Lands, which was like a tunnel, and there's one in Project Quam, which is like this nexus, which is attached to the Bazaar. You go in, you type /Bazaar for an item that you're looking for, you find a trader, and you can find that specific item there if someone's selling it. Or you also have merchants that I think people just sell their trash to, or stuff they don't want that you might want yourself, that you can then go in, speak to that NPC and buy. And it was at that point where I'd started to amass like a little bit of plat, and I was like, I'm going to see if I can get myself some legs, or I'm going to see if I can get myself some shoulders. And it really hit then that, you know, going into this area with a predetermined goal, and I was like, I'm going to get myself this new gear because I deserve it, because I've been grinding for it, because, you know, my next point here, the journey of Everquest is difficult. Like, if you're playing this game on your own, which is definitely not the best way to play it, things are tough. You can't really fight two mobs at a time. You know, you're literally in one-on-one fights for the most part, and, you know, even some of those you struggle to survive. Group enemies that you come across, you know, red con mobs, yellow con mobs, and what I mean by yellow and red con is essentially how dangerous the enemy is. You know, blue is kind of like okay, green is just trivial. Anything yellow and red is pretty tough. Red is almost like guaranteed to kill you, basically. But when you're fighting those enemies, even in a group, it's a challenge. You know, just traveling from A to B in this game is danger. Like, there are real repercussions. I think after a certain level you start to lose XP, maybe even drop some gear as well. You probably heard the term corpse run in the MMO space, which I believe was actually founded by Everquest, maybe Ultimate Online as well. But that's definitely another sense of the game that has really drawn me to it and made me realize what I was missing in the MMO space is the danger, the real feeling of, okay, there is a reward, but there's also a risk. If I go over here and try and explore this pocket of space that I've never seen before, I could die, and I could also die and be bound somewhere totally different, which, you know, as a new player, I've got no way of knowing where to navigate or how to get there. And it's just exciting, and I think that excitement certainly carries into a lot of aspects of this game for me right now, because every zone, every NPC, every class, every piece of armor is new to me, and that is really special. You can only have those rose-tinted glasses for a certain amount of time, but experiencing a game as old as Everquest in 2025 is a very, very strange but also incredible experience. Being able to play something, even just the ability to play something so old still, is incredible. What, you know, passion and modern technology can do, you know, and for the game as old as it is, it's been modernized as much as it can, especially the team over at Quam. They've done wonders. Being able to port certain quality of life tools, certain systems, settings into the game that just make it a bit more feasible, I think is absolutely brilliant. We spoke about the travel of Everquest, and I think in the back of my mind, as I'm playing along and experiencing the game, I'm constantly thinking about how big the game is, and I don't even really want to look at the map. I've kind of got like a mini map at the top left, which is zone based, but I can fully believe if someone was to tell me that the map is absolutely massive with multiple continents, multiple areas, I would fully believe them. And I think there's a real beauty to not knowing what's to come. They say ignorance is bliss, and in this occasion it's really true. I am just really locked into the progression of my character, the mystery. I really do feel like this is the adventure that I've wanted for a long time. I really feel like I can build some genuine friendships out of this game, people that I've played with, guildies, randoms, people that have become less random because I've grouped with them so often now. I don't really know where I want this video to go, but I guess in a way it's just a thank you to the founders of Everquest and, you know, Project Quam, the team over there, for putting the server together and maintaining it, because I've had an experience that I never really thought I would be able to have, and I will continue to play for many months and hopefully many years, and ultimately now be able to get into a game that I have always wanted to, but always struggled to somehow. And if you are watching this on a whim, maybe you're just someone who's considering Everquest for the first time and you've listened to me ramble for X amount of minutes, do yourself a favor and try and avoid going on the live servers initially. And the reason why I say that is, unless you've got a group of buddies that you're going to sit there and religiously log into together, you're really going to struggle to find a social aspect of that game. Pretty much most people that are socializing and actively playing EQ are either on the paid progression servers or they're over on classic sort of private servers like a lot of us are over here. Do yourself a favor and try and find, servers like Project Qualm or P99 to really have that raw experience, because if you want to truly experience Everquest, it will not be in the live solo version of the game with mercenaries. To my understanding, that game has changed drastically from what people consider to be the golden age of Everquest in general. So yeah, I've rambled far too long. I guess I just wanted to put some words out in video format, something a bit longer format for you guys to watch. And if you agree there on some of the points, let me know. If you disagree, by all means, let me know as well. I'd also be really keen to know what you guys feel about Everquest. What do you like? What are your more memorable moments within EQ? Was it a certain expansion? Was it a certain raid, a certain dungeon, a certain item drop? Leave it down below in the comments. I'd be really, really keen to check that out. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this sort of video, please do consider leaving a like, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in the next one.